Okay, great. Well, good evening and hello to everybody on the call. Now, I'm sure you're all aware by now that my name is Paul Castillo, and I've been a Ted.Thomas student for 4 years now, actually going into my fifth year. 2020 will be my fifth year as a student of Ted's. And I guess you could say I'm your host tonight. Host, speaker, I don't know what you want to call me, but I'm your guy tonight. I'm the guy that you're going to be hearing from. So the format tonight is I'm going to speak for the first 15, 20 minutes and just kind of share some things. And then after that, I'm going to open it up and I'm going to let you guys ask questions and just drill me with anything that's on your mind. Now, the first thing that I do want to say tonight is this, and I say this because I know that for me, guys, the most valuable thing is my time. And so in order to ensure that we don't waste anybody's precious time, I want to start by letting you know, in my opinion, who I think shouldn't be on this call. And I don't say this, I certainly don't say this to offend anybody. In fact, I wish that more people would have been open and direct with me over the years, because I know it certainly could have saved myself a lot of time and headache. The real reason I share this is because, I mean, let's face it, what we're talking about here tonight is helping you guys make a decision about whether or not coming to Ted.Thomas's 3-day workshop in March is worth your time. And I'm fully aware of what's involved because I've been there. I mean, I know exactly what it means for every single one of you on the phone. It means spending your hard-earned money on plane tickets and hotels, as well as other travel expenses. And more importantly, it means sacrificing 3 to 4 days of your precious time away from your families and then your day-to-day life. And then when you come back, of course, you're playing catch up, etc. So guys, trust me, I get it because I've been there. So here's the thing that I want to make sure you guys understand is that what Ted teaches at the event is really irrelevant if you guys don't have a certain set of qualities or basic principles. Okay, so here's what I'm referring to. Number one, if you're looking for a get-rich-quick scheme, honestly, you shouldn't be on this call. Okay, this business will certainly require your time. It's going to require your hard work and your effort. So to be very blunt, if you're unwilling to roll up your sleeves and work hard for your success, you may want to go ahead and call it a night right now. I'll tell you what this is. Okay, again, it's not a get-rich-quick scheme. By the way, DJ, can you mute some of the participants because I am getting some feedback? I don't know if that's you, Chris, or you, DJ, yeah, but that would be helpful.
I'll take care of it, Paul.
Okay.
Yeah.
So guys, to be clear, what this is, Ted's opportunity is a realistic and a viable opportunity where if you guys if you learn how to do this now and you start putting the time and the effort into this now, your life can look a lot different a year from now, 3 years from now, etc. And I know this because that's where I'm at today, okay? I once started where you guys are all started now. 4 or 5 years later, I've experienced that in my life. So I can tell you that Ted's opportunity has been a game changer. Now, look, having said that, I don't want to give you the wrong impression. This business does not require a ton of time, okay? It's not something that but it will take some time and effort. So number two, okay, if you can't commit at least 5 to 7 hours per week into your business, into accomplishing your goals and your dreams, then you probably shouldn't be on this call, okay? Number three, if you're not the type of individual that's going to follow through with your commitments, in other words, if you're the kind of person that just moves on from one opportunity to the next, you know, you like to commit to something only to move on because the going gets a little tough in the beginning, or you give up easily, to be very direct, you probably shouldn't be on this call, okay? Because like in any successful business, I will tell you guys from experience, and I'm sure that any other of Ted's successful students will tell you the same thing, there will be some level of frustration in the beginning. Okay, so if you're not the kind of person that can deal with a little bit of adversity, and persevere, not only should you not be on this call, but you probably shouldn't be in business at all, right? Because I think we can all agree that any business that's worthwhile is going to have a little bit of adversity from time to time. Number 4, if you don't have an open mind, okay, if you're not willing to learn something new, I can tell you that maybe you shouldn't be on this call. One thing that I think we would all share in common on this call is that we all probably need to learn something new in order to accomplish our goals, or we really wouldn't need to be on this call to begin with. Okay, so you definitely have to have an open mind, the willingness and the eagerness to learn. Additionally, if you're the kind of person that relies on others to babysit you, to motivate you, all right, maybe you shouldn't be on this call, and I'll just leave that one at that. A couple more here. I would say that if you're generally a negative or a pessimistic person, you probably shouldn't be on this call until you sort that out and get things right between the ears. Personally, I don't know of many, if any, successful people that I've come across in my life that are negative by nature. So just something to think about there. Guys, and then finally, one of the things that is extremely unique to this business, and you should all write this down, okay? RESEARCH. Again, that's RESEARCH. So research. And I can't drive that point home enough. This business is 90% research, and then more research. And so I just point that out because if you're the kind of person that hates doing research, I can tell you right now that you're probably not going to enjoy yourself too much in this business, and you may not want to be on this call. Okay? So having said that, tonight's call is nothing fancy. Nothing formal. It's just a laid back or casual conversation where I'm going to share my perspective, my experience as a student of Ted's for a few years. And then again, I'll open it up to you guys so that you can ask me any questions that you'd like. Now, there is a few things that I want you to know before I get into some questions and answers here. First, I do want you to know that when Ted asked me or invited me to do this call, without hesitation, I said I would, and the reason for that is because I can tell you that having been through Ted's program, I know from firsthand experience that this is 100% real, that it works, and obviously that I can stand behind this 100%. Now, you should also know that I am not an employee of Ted's, okay? So I do not work for Ted. As we speak, you guys, I am talking to you from my home office here in Utah. I'm a student just like the rest of you, just a few years further ahead. And so when I assist other students, I do so as an independent contractor strictly. Okay, so Ted isn't paying me or compensating me in any way to do this call tonight. Now, in complete transparency, he has invited me to come to the March workshop, and he is compensating me for the time that I'll be spending away from my family over that weekend. And hopefully some of you guys make the decision to be there. And so I will be there, and I'll look forward to meeting some of you guys in face and assisting you as much as I can. But to be clear, I'm not being paid for tonight's call in any way. So it's just a very open, and raw, real environment. And finally, I told Ted that I could commit up to 1 hour for this call. So just want those of you to know that still have things to accomplish tonight. We should be off this call in less than 60 minutes, okay? And so let's go ahead and dive in. I figured that a good way to start the call would be by simply answering a few of the questions that the team received in advance. So Chris, DJ, I want to thank you guys for a couple of these questions that you guys forwarded to me to prepare for the call. The most common question that I received was a few of you asked the question, when was Paul's first workshop? So I really liked that question, and I thought it would be a good place to start. And this will not only show you guys what I've been able to accomplish in 4 short years, I'm not the measuring stick, but it'll give you guys an idea of what you can certainly accomplish if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and, put a little time and effort into this. So the short answer is that I got started in 2015, but I want to expand or elaborate on that by sharing my journey that has led me to where I'm at today. So without going too far back and sharing my whole life story, I thought I would start around the year 2008. And this was prior to getting involved in real estate in any way, shape, or form. So back in 2008, I was living in Boise, Idaho, and I was running my own business completely unrelated to real estate. And that business thrived for a few years. My partner and I were doing very well for ourselves, but then that business simply didn't hold up during the recession. And I'm sure many of you experienced the same thing. And I went from having the kind of lifestyle that most of us strive for to literally losing everything. My business went under. I eventually had to file for bankruptcy, foreclosure, of course, eventual bankruptcy. I went through a divorce, and then to top it all off, my ex-wife decided to move back from Idaho across state lines to Utah, which resulted in me seeing my daughters on a very limited basis. So I'm a father of 2. I've got a 21-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old daughter. Of course, when we go back to 2008, they were much younger than that. And it went from me seeing my children on a weekly basis to seeing them on an every other weekend basis at best over the next year to year and a half. So it was without a doubt one of the most challenging periods of my life. And I tied up some loose strings and then eventually found myself back in Utah so that I could be closer to my daughters. And I was in one of those situations where I had some time to start all over and decide what I wanted to do next with my life. And so it was around 2010, 2011 that I decided that real estate was the vehicle for me. Now, initially, I was doing traditional flipping. So at this time, if any of you recall, the banks were sitting on a record number of foreclosures, or what we refer to as REOs in the real estate space, meaning real estate owned. They went through the bank foreclosure process, didn't sell at the foreclosure, and so the bank took back possession. And so what I was doing at the time is I was buying these properties from these banks for very, very cheap. And then I was doing some rehab, nothing major, but nothing lipstick. And then putting a property manager in place who would then screen tenants, and we'd find qualified tenants and then turn around and sell the property as an alternative investment, to the right customers. And I did this for about 3 years. And the money was okay, but it wasn't anything to write home about. And I realized after 2.5 to 3 short years that it wasn't going to help me accomplish my ultimate goals. And so I started seeking out other solutions. And this was when I discovered Ted. And my first workshop with Ted was in 2015. It was around, late 2015. And at that workshop, I sat in class for about 3 days with about 100 other students. And there was a gentleman at the workshop that I met there by the name of Kelly Osmack. And after 3 days, I went home. Didn't really take off with it right away because life just kind of got in the way. And so my first workshop experience was in late 2015. This was a workshop that Ted was doing in Phoenix, Arizona, just like the one that you guys have the opportunity to come to in March. And at this particular workshop, Kelly and I sat in class for for all 3 days with about 100 other students. So workshop was great, learned a lot. For whatever reason, when I went back home, I didn't take off running from there. I guess you could just say that life sometimes just happens and kind of gets in the way. And then I remember about 45 days later hearing from Ted about how this guy Kelly had, since the event was over, had bought a tax deed in the state of California and sold it and made about a $25,000 profit. So he did all of this inside of 45 days. And that was really my awakening moment. In fact, I remember thinking a few specific things. Number one, I remember thinking, okay, so Kelly was at the exact same workshop that I was at. So he didn't really have an edge or any, extra special opportunity that was given to him that I wasn't, afforded. Number two, I remember meeting Kelly, great guy. And, but he didn't strike me as, the smartest guy in the room. And so I remember thinking, golly, if he can do it, there's no reason that I couldn't either. He's just regular Joe, just like I am. And then most importantly, I remember thinking, I live here in the States, and if this guy can do all of this 100% from the comfort of his basement office in another country, in Canada, what is my excuse? And so that was my moment where, Ted likes to call it getting off your rusty dusty. That's when I realized that I couldn't afford to waste any more time and decided that I had to get off my rusty dusty. And so, initially, I bought a few taxing certificates that started redeeming, within weeks after I purchased them, moved right to tax deeds. It was about my fourth auction. Didn't get off to as fast of a start as Kelly did, but after about 4 auctions, started buying tax deeds, made a few mistakes that I learned through, with a lot of support from Ted's team. And then since then, I've been on cruise control. So 2017, 2018, 2019, the last 3 years in a row, I've been able to make well over $100,000 using Ted's system. And so, I believe that if I can do it, if Kelly can do it, anybody on this call can do it, as long as you have some of those personality traits that I mentioned earlier. Okay. And for me, guys, where I feel like the journey really began, I would say is the workshop, because that's where I really feel things started to come together. So that's my story. I'll take any questions on that here in just a few minutes. I did want to answer one more question that I got. Somebody asked, what did I get from the workshop that isn't in the materials? And I thought that was a really great question, so I wanted to address that. And I actually put a lot of thought into this and actually came up with a few different answers to this question. Number one, I was thinking, with a home study course or manuals, you can't really ask them any questions, okay? Where at the event, it's a very interactive environment where I remember being able to ask unlimited questions, but also in a very focused environment where you're not distracted with all the things that are going on in your home. And the questions that you ask, also you have the opportunity of getting them answered by multiple experts. So at these events, Ted's there teaching most of the class, and the portions that he's not teaching are taught by seasoned experts, his actual coaches, that have 12, 15 or more years of experience. And so it's really a good opportunity to pick the brains of multiple experts, as well as students like myself that have a few years of experience that you can learn from as well. I also found that for me, my level of engagement was at a completely different level at the event. And I understand that we all have different learning styles, but I feel like for me, that was very important, okay? Just having that experience of being there in a room surrounded with, a bunch of other people that are on the same page and several different experts whose brains I could pick and who I could learn from. Another thing that I thought was very valuable at the event, which you're simply not going to get through any other avenue, is the networking. The networking is invaluable at these workshops, and it's one of the reasons why I continue to go back again and again and again. See, I think you guys might find this a little odd, but one of the things that I've learned in my life experience is that sometimes the people that are the closest to us can also be the least supportive. And for me, I've always enjoyed the opportunity to surround myself with a bunch of like-minded people that are trying to accomplish the same thing, or they're already accomplishing what I was hoping to accomplish. And I'll add that to this day, the networking still pays off in spades. I mean, there are students who I still stay in touch with and that I talk to on, at least a quarterly basis. Kelly Osbach is one example of that. We met back in 2015. And, we like to have a quarterly conversation where we can just kind of feed off of each other. learn from each other's experiences. And so we like to touch base and discuss deals that we've done, deals that we're working on, share what we've learned, and above and beyond all that, even share resources. So there's been many instances where I'm going into a market where a student has done deals or where I've done deals, and it's a very community, driven environment, where we all want to see each other succeed, and we're here to, help each other. So that's been very, very valuable. And then probably the most important thing that I could think of is that at the event, unlike just working with home study materials from the comfort of your home on your own, everything's updated and it's in real time for today's market. See, the home study course, it's a really good and comprehensive home study course, and it's certainly the best place for any of us to start, but it's not a course that Ted's updating, on an annual basis. That's just not very practical. But yet, just like in any other business, the landscape is always changing, right? And so for me at the workshop, I felt like there was a lot of things that were covered that simply weren't covered at the event. I really felt like it was the next, step, kind of like moving from elementary or middle school, not medical, but middle school to high school. One example I can give, because I deal with students all the time and I've been through this experience, is that what I hear from a lot of students, and I recall going through this, is that when they go through the home study course, a lot of them seem to get hung up on Ted's persistence in the course of, you have to go look at the property. You have to go look at the property. And, that's redundant, right? Ted says that over and over and over again in the course. And a lot of students, they get the impression that that means that they have to physically hop on a plane or drive halfway across the country perhaps and put their own feet on the ground and their own set of eyes right smack in front of the property. And that's just not the case anymore. The principle hasn't changed, right? Meaning that you still have to do proper due diligence and you have to know what you're doing. But see, when Ted created the course, the internet, yeah, it was well established then, but it wasn't very prevalent, at least not in this business. Okay, very few auctions back then offered online auctions. And even further than that, very few, even less than offered online auctions had an online infrastructure in place where you could actually access all of the county records, the public information online to complete most of your due diligence. Well, if you guys fast forward a few years and time continues to pass and the business continues to evolve, you're seeing more and more counties not only offer the information online, but kind of gravitating towards conducting their auctions online, right? Why? Because it's in their best interest, right? Because it really opens up their pool of investors that are going to potentially bid on and, buy these properties. At the workshop, there's a lot of emphasis on that, okay? A lot of emphasis on that. I know that for me, that was very valuable because from the onset, I knew that that's the way that I wanted to run my tax deed business. Where I live here in the state of Utah, I knew very early on that I wasn't going to be able to accomplish my goals in this business focusing solely on my state or my backyard. And so I knew that I was going to have to spread my wings and get to know other markets that I could buy tax deeds in. And that's why that was so valuable for me. And, to this day, guys, that's for those of you that are interested, that's how I run my tax deed business. I invest primarily in 3 states, which I won't mention on the call because I don't want everybody, flocking to the exact same place or thinking that the right market for Paul is the right market for everybody else. But I do it 100% online, the same way Kelly does it. I never leave the comfort of my house for the purpose of doing this business. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm now going on my 4th year in a row where I'll make over $100,000 a year. And on average, I put about 7 to 12 hours a week into my tax deed business. And so finally, I would say this, And I can only speak for myself, but for me, I will say that I don't ever go into anything, any business with the expectation that I'm going to learn everything that I need to know about that business and become an expert with just a book, or a home study course. And I rely on history for that lesson. For example, I look at doctors. Yes, doctors rely on books, but they also go to class, right? Lawyers, same thing. They rely on books, but they also go to class. And in my opinion, the same can be said for pretty much any lucrative field. So personally, I don't go into anything expecting to learn all of the ins and outs or all of the intricacies of any business with just books. I mean, if you guys can do it, that's great, okay? But if you guys are not where you want to be financially and the light bulbs are starting to go off, and you think that this is a business or an opportunity that can help you get there, then yeah, I would highly encourage you to take your education to the next level, and I would encourage you to come to class. I did get one other question here that I thought was kind of fun. Somebody asked, what did I like versus what didn't I like about the workshop? Well, what I didn't like was that I had to pay for my own meals, and that Ted keeps it kind of cool in the room. So you will get a little chilly from time to time. But look, I'll just say this. I'm not the kind of person that likes to sit around and waste time, okay? I don't go to these types of events for entertainment. And I've been to, I can't tell you how many different events I've been to, and I can't tell you how many times I've walked out the first day or just didn't come back after the first day because I realized early on that or at least I felt like I was wasting time. So what I really enjoyed about Ted's event, and I've been to many of these workshops, is that I did find myself completely engaged from start to finish. Okay, and Ted can be pretty entertaining, so I'm sure that had a little bit to do with it. But for all 3 days, from start to finish, I was engaged, and there was substance, real substance to this. I didn't feel like I was only there to be sold some other package, which I felt many a times. And don't get me wrong, okay, Ted is certainly a good salesman, and he does offer advanced trainings at the workshop, but his events were just different. At other events, I always felt pressured, where with Ted's team, I never felt pressured. And I also felt like Ted really didn't need to be there, and yet he was. I really admired that. I knew Ted wasn't there because he needs the money. And I also felt like, here's a guy who isn't too good to show up at his own event, which is very rare in this space. I found that most gurus are just too good to show up at their own event. So that was really a breath of fresh air. And there was also, what I thought was really cool about Ted's event was that he didn't bring in a bunch of outside speakers to just sell me a bunch of unrelated opportunities, which I've experienced many times at other events. It wasn't some pitch fest, as I like to call it. It was 100% focused on his program, his opportunity, and, really gave me an opportunity to learn, this specific skill, this business, and really kind of go with it from there. So I'll kind of leave it at that. And with that, I will open it up to questions and see if I can give you the best answers. Now, having said that, DJ and Chris, I don't have access to the board, so I'm not seeing any of the questions. So if you guys can help me by relaying some of the questions, that would be appreciated. Okay, so why don't we do this? If anybody has a question, just holler your name out, and the first name that I hear, I will repeat the name, and then the floor is yours.
Susan Kowalski.
Hi, Susan. How are you?
Great. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for asking. Go ahead.
We were looking forward to being able to do Ted's first class. However, it was in Florida when we were going to be in Arizona. And you mentioned tonight a class in Arizona, so you sparked my interest. Can you please fill me in?
Yeah, so that was 4 years ago. Yeah. So I just happened to get lucky. When I went to my first workshop, Ted was still traveling around a little bit more than he currently is these days. So these workshops, for the most part, they will be in the Cocoa Beach, Cape Canaveral, maybe Orlando from time to time. Don't be shy, guys. If you have any questions, just announce your name, and then I'll give you the floor.
I have a question for you. I mean, I know you have, 2 daughters and everything else. How much, was it worth all the time to arrange to have your daughters taken care of and everything else, and, prepare and travel all the way to Cocoa Beach or Florida? I know you've been to more than one event.
And I go back to events because you're always, for one, Ted has invited me to come back and now pay it forward and help assist other students and point them in the right direction. But yeah, absolutely it was. As I said, 3 years in a row, I've been able to make well over 100 this year without even, if I did nothing at all, DJ, I'm already going to have $100,000 a year income coming in this year because of the seeds that I've planted in the previous years, because I've been able to continually grow, and evolve this business. But absolutely it was. And it's not just the income. What I really value the most about this business is the flexibility. The fact that I can do this whenever I choose to do it. Nobody's going to tell me when to clock in, when to clock out, when I can eat my lunch, so to speak. This is not a job. It's not a JLB. It's a real business, that you can work around, customize around your lifestyle, put the time in when you choose to put the time in, and, have the free time and the flexibility to do the things that are the most important to you. For me, I love the flexibility of being able to get up in the morning with my daughter, spend the morning with her, eat breakfast, take her to school, be there to pick her up. When they have field trips or class activities, it's usually a bunch of moms and then me. I love having that flexibility, to be there for the most important things in her life. So it's not just the money that can be made, the fact that this is a lucrative opportunity. But as I said earlier in the call, my most precious commodity is my time. And so without a doubt, this has been worth it, many times over, and it continues to pay off.
Great. Thanks for answering that.
Paul, I got a question in the
pretty...
chat here. Question is, how many speakers are at the workshops? Yeah,
that's a good question. So my experience has been that Ted brings in 2 other speakers. Well, I guess let me back up. Okay, speakers, there's going to be more than that because you've got Ted. I've found from experience that he'll bring in 2, maybe 3 of his coaches that speak, so you can learn from them. He might have students like myself that speak. So, as far as speakers, you're talking about his team, right? Ted, coaches, experienced students like myself that are all there to teach you and, for you to learn from. As far as outside speakers, I have found that he brings in 2. And one of them is a guy that Ted has established a relationship with that specializes in the area of funding. So we find that a lot of our students, one of the challenges or obstacles that they face when they're first starting their business is financial resources, right? A lot of us don't just have unlimited piles of cash lying around that we can fund our business with. So this guy, Tyler, that he brings in is there because he helps students specifically in that area, helping them obtain additional access to funds, or just financial resources that they can in turn use to start, to build, and to grow their business. And then the other outside speaker that I've seen Ted bring in is an attorney who lives actually here in Utah where I live. And he's somebody that I believe Ted has had a long-standing relationship with, and he specializes in the field of asset protection, corporate entities, and is there to help you determine what is the right structure for you to get started with. Having said that, though, I will tell you that he doesn't sell anything. He's not there to sell you any kind of a package or course or corporate entity. He's got some kind of a relationship established with Ted where Ted takes care of him on his own. So that's why I said, one of the things I really appreciated at the event is that there wasn't a whole bunch of outside speakers there to just sell me a bunch of other stuff. Every speaker that was there on stage, had something to offer that really related to this business or a specific area of need. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, Paul?
Yes.
Paul, it's René Blanchard. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? I heard Ray. Is that correct? Okay. I'm good, Ray.
On tax sales, where do mortgage stay on the properties? And where do you find that information?
Okay. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? I didn't quite make out the question.
Yeah. On tax sales, where do mortgage stay on the properties? Apparently, there are some states where that the mortgage stays on the property even if you buy a property on a tax sale.
Right.
So where do you find that information?
So for my experience, and keep in mind, okay, that you're not going to talk to anybody who knows every single state intimately.
Exactly.
Okay. Ted's not even going to pretend to know every single state intimately. In fact, one of the commonalities that I've found with all of Ted's most successful students, Ray, is that as they establish themselves in this business, they will, they pick 3, 4, maybe 5 markets at the very most, and they really get to know those markets well, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's one of the criteria that you're going to want to look for. Is you want to avoid states where the mortgage will survive the tax sale, because that's going to kind of defeat the purpose, right?
That's
And
right.
buying these properties at a big discount. To my knowledge, New Mexico is one where not only the mortgage, but every single lien will survive the sale. So New Mexico is a state that I will tell you that you probably want to just avoid altogether, because there's just much better opportunity in, pretty much all other states. Another state that I know the mortgage will survive, at least on the initial auction, is the state of Pennsylvania. Okay, so Pennsylvania, they're unique, and they actually do a couple different rounds. They've got what's called the upset sale first, okay, where other liens are not extinguished. If it does not sell at the upset sale, then they'll follow with a judicial sale, where all of the liens are extinguished with a few exceptions, like an IRS lien, things like that. So there may be others beyond those 2 states, but not that I'm familiar with. Does that answer your question, Ray? I think you cut out and came back in, Ray. Did that answer your question?
Yes, that answered the questions about the states, but you said that some states also have IRA, tax lien on them. How do you find those? Do you have to go through the website of the states that you are working in?
No, I said IRS, Internal
IRS.
Revenue Service.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it just depends on the state. Okay. Remember that this is governed at a state level, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's almost like dealing with 50 different countries from that standpoint. Okay. And that's one of the benefits of coming to the workshop, is being able to leave, with an idea of what market you're going to invest in. One of the exercises that I walk you through at the workshop is how I went about the process from the very beginning, starting with literally all 50 states on a list or on a map, and then narrowing it down to select the first 1, 2, and eventually my 3rd market to go into.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I walk you through that exercise at the event. It's not something I can do on a call like this, but at the event, we walk you through that exercise so that you can make that decision and ideally leave the event with a good idea of what markets are right for you. Okay. How you find that is going to vary from state to state. So there are some states or some counties where they will tell you right there on the list. When you look at the list, the spreadsheet of the properties that are going to auction, they may even have a column that says whether or not there's IRS liens on the property. Some might attach a title report that you can look at the title report, and it'll show you not just IRS liens, but anything else that's on the property. Others might provide you with very limited information where you're going to need to learn how to access the information online. You know, it is public record through like the recorder's page, okay, in order to find out whether or not any IRS liens exist on the property.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say this about IRS liens. The IRS, by law, at least in most states, if they had a lien on a tax foreclosed property, they're going to have 6 months to protect their interest. And if they choose to protect their interest, then you will get paid back in full with a little tiny, like maybe 2% interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've chosen to avoid that just because I like to move quickly. You know, time is money. I like to move quickly. And so I've chosen states where I know I'm going to have my deed in a matter of 30 to 45 days, and I can turn around and do whatever I want to with the property. And I also have decided to avoid properties that have IRS liens so that it doesn't prolong or delay me being able to go ahead and start selling the property. But it doesn't mean that I wouldn't at some case, like if the deal is just a screaming deal, right, where I felt like, oh man, like this is just a home run, the IRS lien wouldn't scare me. It would just be one extra thing to take into consideration. See, the IRS is not in the business of owning property. And I've not heard of a scenario where they've actually protected their interest, but I do know that they will also let the 6-month window run its course. So it's a situation where I probably would call the IRS and negotiate a payoff for pennies on the dollar, just so that I can get clear title and then turn around and exit out of the deal a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Paul, I'm getting a few questions here on the chat, so let me go to the next one here from Tom. You said you average about 7 hours a week for a new person first 3 months. How much time should I invest on the first 3 months? Yeah, I'm sorry, I read this bad, but 7 hours a week for the new person, the first 3 months, how much time should I invest and what area to focus on the first 3 months to gain momentum?
Right. So I understand the question, and that's a great question. And it was Chris, right? Or who was
Tom,
the
Tom
person
asked
that
the
asked?
question. I just read it. Yeah.
Okay. So Tom, I'm talking to you. Great question. Look, 7, 10, 12 hours a week, whatever you can afford to do, as long as you can do 5 to 7 hours per week, you're going to be able to start progressing, okay, at a pace that's acceptable for you. As long as you're informed, as long as you're educated, right? As long as you know what you're doing. That's the whole premise of coming to this workshop. Because somebody could put in 30 hours a week, but they're on their own, just spinning their wheels, getting frustrated, and accomplish less in that 30 hours a week, Tom, than you might out of 5, 7 hours a week with the knowledge that you're going to gain from going through Ted's course, coming to the workshop, and being able to put a plan in place. Now, the time that I put into my business, I mean, it's really never changed from the beginning until now. Fast forward several years later, the activities are what change. So when I first got started, those 7, 10, 12 hours a week, for the most part, that was dedicated time to learning, right? Going through manuals, audios, videos, going to the workshop, you know, maybe working with my coach, okay? Finding other information that I could scour the web for, right? Just education, okay? Education has to come before the application. And then you'll kind of change gears. And then you'll find that maybe the bulk of that 7, 10, 12 hours a week, things change where all of a sudden now the bulk of that time is spent researching properties, narrowing down a list as you're preparing for an auction, doing all proper due diligence, you know, covering, you know, just putting your exit strategy in place, right? And just preparing for the auction, knowing what your max bid is going to be based on your exit strategy. Once you've completed an auction, if you're the successful bidder and now you've got a property, a couple properties, It may be that over the next 90 days, you might be spending time on executing your exit strategy to sell the property, to realize your profit, but maybe you're still putting a little bit of that time into preparing for another auction. There are windows of the year where I'm doing next to nothing, okay? And that's going to look differently for everybody that moves forward, because we're not all going to be investing in the exact same markets. You know, there's one market, for instance, that I invest in where between late July through the end of October, I'm pretty busy just gearing up for all the auctions that this state offers. And I really can't focus on much else, because that provides me with an opportunity where I can load up on property. After that's done, now I'm focusing on executing my strategies, and then there may be a 3-4 month window where I'm literally doing nothing other than just fielding offers, you know, putting contracts in place, working with a real estate agent that's listing the property. So the activities will change, but you could really build a business here where you can dedicate 7, 10, 12 hours a week, you know, and really carve out a nice income for yourself. And I'm one of those guys that believes in having a few different streams of income. And that's the main reason why I don't, you know, put more time into this and get more returns, because when I lost everything during the crash of 2008, 2009, I was 100% dependent on my one business. It provided a good income, but it was my only source of income. And when I lost that, my world came crashing down, as I shared with you guys earlier. And so one thing that I've decided to do when I started back over again was to create a few different streams of income. And Ted's program was just perfect for me, because it's something I could put part-time effort into, get full-time income type of returns, and afford me the flexibility of time, you know, that I could, you know, build other businesses and focus on additional projects as well. Tom, does that answer your question? We've got some gun-shy individuals on the phone tonight.
Actually, Abby is asking, are we able to bring our significant others to the event?
Okay, so Addie, Ted usually offers that for a $500 guest fee. I don't have the authority to make an exception to that, but one of my colleagues on the phone here, DJ, does. So DJ, why don't I let you respond to that question?
Addie, if you just email the office tomorrow with your question, they'll just look up what your package and ticket that you bought, and we'll do the best we can to be able to get yourself to attend for free. But you need to just contact the office, and then they'll let you know.
Okay, and next question here I have
hang on. I don't know if that was Addie that was trying to respond. So just to button up that question, okay, if you guys can write this down, let me give you the phone number to the office. Okay, so that you know who to call. The office is 321-449-9940. In addition to that, okay, if you want to communicate directly with me, I will see what I can do for you once I'm able to, you know, get some authority. And my email is paul@Ted.Thomas.com. Very easy, paul@Ted.Thomas.com. Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Okay, I got something from Lisa. Can you tell us what time the workshops start on March 27 and end on the 29th? I'm curious because I will be traveling from Toronto and will go on a business trip on March 30th.
Okay, so you'll want to get in either the night before. Coming from Toronto, I imagine that's going to be your only option, is to fly in on Thursday. And we do actually start the event with a meet and greet in the hotel lobby on Thursday evening. Now, that's a very casual environment. It's not part of the workshop from the standpoint that there's no lessons. You're just networking, okay, and meeting some of your peers that you'll be in class with over the next 3 days. I'm always there. DJ is there. The coaches are there. So it's just an opportunity to kind of get settled in and start meeting some of the folks that you'll be in class with for the next 3 days. You're not going to miss out on anything if you don't make the meet and greet, but you'll definitely want to get settled into your hotel room Thursday night, because we do start at 8 a.m. on Friday morning. It's going to be probably ending at about 5 p.m. on the first evening. And then same thing, Saturday 8 to 5. Sunday, Ted on occasion does end a little bit earlier, but I would plan on an 8 to 5 schedule for all 3 days.
Can you speak about the coaches? Tom asked that, the same Tom?
Yeah.
Can you speak about the
So,
coach?
look, I don't know who Ted has invited to be at this event or not, right? All I know is he's invited me to come. From experience, I've never been to one of these events where he doesn't have at least 2 of his 4 coaches. So understand, guys, that, look, Ted doesn't run some large organization, right? He's not trying to conquer the world. Okay, Ted will even refer to us as a small boutique firm. Okay, Ted's looking for quality, not quantity. Okay, and he only has 4 coaches. So we've got Coach Crystal, who's in California. I think she's been with Ted for 17 to 20 years. We've got Coach Bob Schumacher, who is out of Georgia. I think he's been with Ted for about the same amount of time, maybe a little over 20 years. And then we've got Coach Bill Williams, who's out of Florida. He's been with Ted for, I think, 12 to 15 years plus. And then there's Coach Bill Beddoes, who's out of, so there's 2 Bills. Coach Bill Beddoes from Michigan. And he's been with Ted for at least 10 to 12 years. Now, these are individuals that, you know, these are real players. They're getting their hands dirty. They're in the trenches consistently, okay, on an ongoing basis in this business. These are individuals that if you go back a number of years, they started out exactly where we all started from, ground zero. And then somehow they discovered Ted, the same way we all discovered Ted. And then they became students of Ted's. And then they became extremely successful students of Ted's. And so somewhere along their journey, they expressed their desire to train, teach, you know, help others, pay it forward, if you will. And so then they went through a very rigorous training procedure with Ted personally. You know, one thing I've learned is that learning how to do something and excelling at something yourself, that's a very different skill set than being able to turn around and train and teach somebody else how to duplicate that success. And so these are coaches that have that, you know, that unique skill set where they've not only mastered the business and have had, you know, so much success having built their own, you know, lucrative tax deed businesses, but they've been very successful in teaching, coaching, and helping others. And that's who these folks are. And Ted has a very high standard for his coaches. I know that one of those being that, look, if it's going to compromise the integrity of your tax deed business, I'm really not interested. So they've got to be able to shuffle, you know, the continued success of their businesses along with, you know, taking on the responsibility of training and coaching others. And I had the opportunity of working with one of these individuals in that capacity, so I can tell you from firsthand experience that these guys are the real deal. And you'll meet them at the event. I would say at least 2 of them. I've seen as many as 3 of them there at certain events.
Hey, okay, Paul, listen, I'm gonna, if you want to take one last question, I'm just gonna unmute everybody and see if anybody raised their hand and ask a last question. There you go.
Okay, so guys, in closing then, you guys should be getting an email as we speak here. I don't know if any of you are on the computer or the web and checking your email, but you will be getting an email from the team, which will have a direct link that you guys can go and register for the event yourselves. Now, everybody on this call does have a ticket on file which covers your seat at the class. And so what Ted does, just so that you're all clear, is in order to reserve your seat, you will pay a $149 refundable deposit. This is Ted's way to get rid of all the tire kickers and make sure that if he's paying for a venue to accommodate 100 people, right, he's, you know, not only 75 are going to show up. Okay, so you pay a $149 refundable deposit, and then the first morning of the event, when you register, that gets refunded.
It's DJ. It was just what we're saying is that just to reserve your seat at the event, I just asked you to pay $149 refundable seat deposit, just so he knows that your seat's guaranteed and we're not going to give it to someone else. When you show up to the first day of the event, then we'll just refund you that $149. That's just a commitment on your part, so Ted knows that you're serious about coming to the event. We'll email out you a direct link to it. It's also in some of the other emails that you've gotten in the past. And if you have any questions and you want to talk to Paul, some people don't like asking questions, online or with other people on the call, you can send Paul a direct email. His email address is paul@Ted.Thomas.com. Just give him a day or two to come back. He's just helping us out from this standpoint, but he will respond back to his emails, generally responds back within one business day. So feel free to also just send him an email if you have a specific question, and I'm sure he'll be glad to answer it for. Thanks for all your time to come to this call. So thanks everyone for being on the call tonight, and hope to see all you guys at the workshop. Have a great night.